I'm Brian, 32 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've quietly served as the unofficial safety net for my entire family. I never really saw myself as the one who held everything together, but reflecting now, that's precisely what I've been doing. If my younger brother, Jason, struggled with rent, I'd cover it. When Mom's car inevitably broke down, I'd foot the repair bill. And when Dad's insulting business hit a slow patch, I'd discreetly slip him a few hundred, just enough to tide him over until the next client appeared. I never uttered a single complaint. Not once. I convinced myself this was simply what a good son and older brother should do. Step in when he could. And I always could. I have a stable tech job. I live comfortably below my means, and honestly, helping him never felt like a huge burden until last Sunday, we were all settled in my parents' living room, Mom, Dad, Jason, and me, idly watching a football game. It was one of those quintessential lazy afternoons. The air thick with the scent of coffee, the low hum of the game, the only sound filling the quiet. Then, out of nowhere, Jason turned to me, a smug little grin spreading across his face. "So, Brian," he drawled, "where's your wife and kids?" He didn't wait for an answer. "Oh, right. You don't have any." Mom actually let out a peal of laughter. Dad chuckled softly under his breath, and Jason, as if he just landed the most brilliant punchline of the century, leaned back, soaking it all in. I just sat there for a second, utterly stunned. Normally, I'd let a remark like that slide right off. Jason had always been a golden boy, younger, undeniably more charismatic, the kind who effortlessly spun every poor decision into a charming anecdote. I'd endured my fair share of digs from him over the years, but something about the casual cruelty in his voice this time, coupled with that smug grin and everyone else's laughter, struck me harder than usual. I managed to force a thin smile and mumbled, "Yeah, no kids." But inside, it felt like something profoundly fragile had just snapped. The next few minutes passed in a blur of forced casual conversation and light-hearted jokes, but my mind had completely disengaged. I kept replaying every instance I'd bailed Jason out, every vacation I'd forfeited to ensure Mom and Dad wouldn't lose a house, every personal sacrifice I'd made so they could have what they needed. And here they were, laughing at my expense, treating me like I was nothing more than a convenient punchline. When the general laughter finally subsided, I turned to Jason, and in the calmest, most measured voice I could muster, I simply said, "Where's your money, Jason?" "Because I've been supporting you until today." The room went instantly, utterly silent. Jason's smug grin faltered, his expression finally shifting. Mom's eyes widened in disbelief. Dad leaned forward, a bewildered frown on his face, as if unsure he'd heard me correctly. I hadn't raised my voice, I hadn't yelled, but the quiet intensity with which I spoke landed like a hammer, striking the coffee table. And in that precise moment, everything began to shift. For several seconds afterward, the silence was so profound you could practically hear a pin drop. It was the first time I'd ever addressed him like that, not with a flash of anger, but with an unshakable finality. Jason was the first to regain his composure. He leaned forward, that familiar grin slowly sliding back into place, though it seemed a little more brittle, a little more forced this time. "Wow," he chuckled, a nervous edge to it. "Touchy much?" "It was just a joke, Brian." Mom offered a nervous, placating laugh and patted my knee, clearly trying to smooth over the sudden tension. "You know your brother," she murmured. "He's just teasing. Don't take it so seriously." I didn't respond immediately. I simply stared at Jason, feeling that familiar, hot pressure building in my chest, a pressure I'd been diligently ignoring for years. "A joke," I finally stated, my voice flat. "Right." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Look, Brian, we genuinely appreciate everything you do for this family, but there's no need to get dramatic. Jason's young. He's just having fun. You can't expect him to be as responsible as you are." That single line, "You can't expect him to be as responsible as you," felt like gasoline poured directly onto a smoldering fire. I'd heard variations of it my entire life. Jason wasn't held to the same standards as I was. Jason didn't have to pull straight A's in school. Jason didn't have to pay rent, when he moved back home after dropping out of college. Jason didn't have to do anything but simply show up, flash that charming smile, and the world seemed to bend to his will. And apparently, I was expected to continue enabling it. I didn't argue. Not then. I simply stood, grabbed my jacket, and, without another word, said, "I'll see you later." I didn't slam the door on my way out, though every fiber of my being yearned to. That night, I went straight home and sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, poring over my bank statements. Thousands. No, tens of thousands of dollars had funneled into my family over the years. Rent for Jason, utility bills for my parents, emergencies that somehow never saw repayment. I had always brushed it off, telling myself I was doing the right thing. But sitting there, staring at the cold, stark numbers, a brutal realization hit me. I had made far too easy for them. The following week was quiet, but it wasn't the good kind of quiet. I received a couple of texts from Mom. "You okay?" And asterisk Jason didn't mean it. You know how he is. Asterisk I didn't reply. I needed space to think, to process. By Thursday, I was starting to feel a little more centered, a little more grounded, when my phone rang. It was Dad. "We need to talk," he stated, his voice tight. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "About what?" "About the bills," he replied. "The mortgage is due, and I know you usually cover the difference. You haven't sent anything this month." I felt that familiar, hot pressure ignite in my chest once more. "Yeah," I said slowly, deliberately. "I'm not doing that anymore." There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end. Then Dad's voice sharp with disbelief. "What do you mean you're not doing that anymore?" "I mean," I clarified, my voice steady, "I'm done paying for everything. I'm done being the backup plan. I'm done being laughed at while I bankroll everyone else's lives." "Brian, you can't just stop," he retorted, a rising panic in his tone. "Your mother and I rely on that money." "And that," I said, "is precisely the problem. You shouldn't." His anger started to simmer then. I could hear in his voice that low, dangerous rumble he used when I was a kid, the one that meant I'd truly cross a line. "You're being selfish," he snapped. "This family has always supported each other." I almost laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Has it?" I challenged, because I don't recall anyone ever supporting me. I just remember being told I had to take care of everyone else. Dad hung up without another word. That weekend, I received an invitation, though some felt more accurate, to Sunday dinner. I almost didn't go, but a stubborn part of me felt compelled to witness what they had to say. The moment I walked into the house, I could feel the tension, palpable and stifling, like a wall of heat. Mom was setting the table with an almost aggressive precision, as if each plate had personally offended her. Dad sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, his face a mass of stone. Jason, meanwhile, leaned casually against the kitchen counter, scrolling on his phone, looking as if he didn't have a single care in the world. Dinner started quietly enough, a strange silence hanging in the air, but halfway through, Mom finally broke it. "Brian, we simply can't keep going like this. Your father and I have bills, and Jason has his student loans." I cut her off, unable to help myself. "Jason dropped out of college, Mom." She blinked, momentarily surprised by the interjection, but pressed on. "And you make more than enough to help out. You've always done it before." That was before, I countered, my voice hardening, before I realized I'm the only one here actually trying to be an adult. Jason finally looked up from his phone, a familiar smirk twisting his lips. "Oh, so now you're better than us because you've got some money?" I turned to him, my voice sharp, cutting through the air. "No, Jason. I'm better than you because I work for it. You sit around all day pretending you're figuring your life out while you burn through my paycheck." Jason rolled his eyes dismissively. "Whatever. You're still single. Can't be that great of a life." And that was the moment something inside me just settled. The anger, which had been a constant companion, evaporated, replaced by a profound sense of finality. I was done. Done explaining. Done defending. Done playing the predefined role they'd written for me since I was a child. I slowly put my fork down, looked around the table, and said very calmly, very clearly, I'm not paying for anything else. Not the mortgage, not Jason's rent, not the car insurance. Nothing. If that means you lose the house, then that's entirely on you. Mom gasped, a small choke sound. Dad slammed his hand on the table, the sharp crack echoing through the room. Don't talk like that in this house, he barked, his face crimson. I stood up. Then maybe I shouldn't be in this house. I walked out before they could even react, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm, but my head felt clearer than it had in years. The very next day, the calls began. Mom, Dad, even Jason, all leaving voicemails, each one a variation on the theme of how I was tearing the family apart, how I was choosing money over them, how I simply didn't understand the immense pressure they were under. I listened to every single one, sitting at my kitchen table once more. But this time, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel a shred of guilt. Instead, I could feel it coming. The next step, the moment when the pressure wouldn't just be disembodied words on a voicemail, but a direct attempt to force me back into my old role. And when that moment arrived, I knew I would be ready. The voicemails continued relentlessly throughout the week. By Friday, I'd stopped even listening to them. I'd go through my day with my phone on silent, seeing the missed calls pile up and feel a strange, conflicting mix of dread and relief. Dread, because I knew a confrontation was inevitable. Relief, because for the first time in years, I wasn't frantically rushing to fix everything. But Sunday morning, a text from Mom flashed across my screen, short and direct. We're coming over. My stomach plummeted. I considered ignoring it, pretending I wasn't home, but I knew that wouldn't deter them. And sure enough, 20 minutes later, a sharp, insistent knock echoed at my door. Not a polite rap, but the kind that carried an unspoken, forceful message. Open up. When I opened the door, Mom stood there, her face set in that tight, strange smile she always wore when trying to pretend everything was perfectly fine. Dad was grim-faced, right behind her. Jason trailed in last, wearing a crumpled hoodie, looking as though he just rolled out of bed. Brian, Mom announced, brushing past me into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. We need to talk. I shut the door and followed them into the living room, where they promptly made themselves comfortable on my couch and armchair, as if they owned the place. We can't keep doing this, Dad began without any preamble. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage now. The bank is calling. If you don't help us, Brian, we could lose the house. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed over my chest. I told you, I'm done. Mom's face tightened. You're being unreasonable, Brian. This is your family's home. You grew up there. Yes, I agreed, my voice flat. And I'm not going to bankrupt myself to keep it, especially when no one else is willing to step up. Jason snorted from the couch. You act like you're some kind of saint. You make good money. It's not like you're hurting. Why not just do the right thing and help? Because, I retorted, my voice sharper than I intended, it's not help anymore, Jason. It's expected. You all sit around waiting for me to save the day every single time, and I'm done doing it. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mom took a deep, fortifying breath, as if bracing herself. Fine, she said, her voice brittle. If you won't do it voluntarily, we've already taken care of it. I frowned, a cold knot forming in my stomach. What does that mean? Dad reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slim manila folder, setting it with a soft thud on my coffee table. We went to the bank, he explained, his gaze unwavering. We co-signed your name on a home equity line of credit. The funds are already transferred. The house is safer now. My stomach plummeted, instantly turning to ice. You what? Mom rushed to explain, her voice rising in frantic justification. We had to, Brian. They were going to start foreclosure proceedings. We didn't have a choice. Yes, you did, I said, my voice dangerously low, each word dripping with venom. You had every choice, and you chose to forge my signature. Jason spoke up then, a triumphant grin spreading across his face, as if this were all some grand, hilarious joke. Hey, look on the bright side, Brian. You didn't even have to lift a finger this time. It's like you're the hero without even trying. I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs, an icy fury taking hold. Do you even hear yourself? You just admitted to committing fraud with my name. And you think this is funny? Jason just shrugged, dismissive. It's just money, Brian. Relax. I couldn't sit still any longer. I snatched the folder from the table, my hands trembling as I flipped through the pages. There was, stark and undeniable, my name, my personal information, my forged signature, all inextricably linked to a loan I hadn't agreed to. Tens of thousands of dollars that I would now be legally responsible for. You had no right. I breathed, my voice barely a whisper, yet vibrating with rage. Asterisk, none starved. Dad's jaw tightened defiantly. We had every right, Brian. This is about keeping the family together. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions for the greater good. I laughed then, a short, sharp, humorless sound that tore from my throat. The greater good? Is that what you're calling it? You stole from me. You used my credit, my name, to bail yourselves out again. And you didn't even ask. Mom's eyes welled with fresh tears. We didn't want to put that kind of pressure on you, Brian. You've been so stressed lately. I stared at her, utterly stunned by the audacity. So instead, I finished for her. You just went behind my back. Jason leaned back on the couch, a smug smirk still plastered on his face. Honestly, Brian, you're overreacting. You've been carrying us for years. What's the difference if you do it one more time? And that was it. That was a pivotal moment. Something deep inside me went quiet. Not angry quiet, but ice quiet. The kind of profound stillness that descends when you finally stop expecting anything to change and realize, with chilling clarity, that you have to be the one to change it. I carefully closed the folder, set it back down on the coffee table, and looked at each of them in turn, my gaze unwavering. Get out, I said. Mom blinked, confused. What? You heard me. I repeated, my voice devoid of emotion. Get out of my apartment. Dad surged to his feet, his face inflamed. Don't you dare talk to your mother like that. I said, get out. I reiterated, my voice like cold, hard stone. They hesitated, exchanging nervous glances, but something in my expression must have conveyed that I wasn't bluffing, because after a tense moment, they all slowly got up and left. Jason was the last one out, and as he passed me, he muttered, You're such a drama queen. I didn't reply. I simply shut the door behind them and locked it. Then I sank onto the couch, staring at the folder as if it might spontaneously combust. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about trust. Trust they had utterly, irrevocably shattered. And as I sat there in the sudden, heavy quiet of my apartment, a new, unsettling realization settled over me. They weren't going to stop. Not until I made them. After they left, I remained on my couch for what felt like hours, the folder still lying on the coffee table, an ominous, cursed object. Every glance at it made my stomach churn. The numbers on the page seemed to glare back at me. The total loan amount, the crippling interest rate, the relentless payment schedule, and my forged signature, a mocking reminder that my family had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. That night, sleep was an impossibility. I kept replaying the entire horrifying conversation over and over in my head. The way Mom had claimed they didn't have a choice, as if it were a valid excuse. The way Dad had stood there, justifying her actions as if they were noble. The way Jason had laughed, treating it all as if it were some entertaining farce. Around 2 a.m., I finally gave up on sleep. I got up, went to the kitchen, and made a cup of tea I didn't even drink, just to have something to do before returning to the silent table. The apartment was so quiet, it almost physically hurt. I'd always thought of myself as close to my family. Maybe not emotionally, but certainly in terms of duty. I'd always been there when they needed me. And now I felt like I didn't even know who they were anymore. The next morning, I dragged myself to work, barely functional. My coworkers probably assumed I was sick. I just sat at my desk, staring blankly at my screen, mindlessly clicking through emails without actually reading them. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest tightened into a vice. By Tuesday, the voicemails had shifted from pleading to outright guilt-tripping. Brian, this is your mother, one began, her voice dripping with accusation. "I can't believe you threw us out like that. Your father hasn't slept in 2 days. Jason is so stressed out. We did what we had to do. You'll understand when you have a family of your own." That last line cut deeper than I expected. The implication that I wasn't a real adult because I didn't have a wife and kids, the very thing Jason had mocked me for, stung more than I wanted to admit. Wednesday, Jason texted me directly. "Asked her to stop acting like a victim. You're fine. Just pay it and move on." Asterisk, I didn't reply. But by Thursday, the relentless pressure had started to feel unbearable. My chest was tight all day. My head pounded with a dull throb. My stomach was a tangled mess of knots. I went to bed early but lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had possibly come to this, how I had transformed from the dependable, ever-present one to the family enemy in the span of a single week. That weekend, I found myself driving past my parents' house, just to see if it was still there. I don't even know why. Perhaps to somehow convince myself this nightmare was real. The lights were on. Jason's car sat in the driveway. Everything looked perfectly normal from the outside, but I knew better. Inside the house, they were undoubtedly talking about me, twisting the narrative, casting me as a villain who had selfishly abandoned them. I didn't stop. I just kept driving, past the house, past the familiar edge of town, until I ended up at an empty overlook where I could see the whole valley spread out beneath me. I sat there for a long, long time, engine off, watching the sun slowly dip below the horizon. That was my rock bottom, sitting in the dark, utterly alone in my car, finally realizing that the people I had sacrificed for, the people I thought I was protecting, had never truly respected me. They saw me as a resource, not a person, a bank account with legs. I went home that night and, with a chilling clarity, made a decision. I wasn't going to fix this. Not this time, not for them. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and started researching. I devoured everything I could find about what to do if your identity is used without your consent. The next morning, I called my bank and asked to speak with their fraud department. I explained what happened, carefully, calmly, detailing the situation and asking what my options were. The woman on the phone was sympathetic, but blunt. It was complicated. Because my name and information were used, and because it was my own parents who had done it. This would undoubtedly involve police reports, legal filings, maybe even a court case. When I hung up, I just sat there, letting the gravity of it all sink in. If I went down this path, there would be no turning back. My parents could face serious legal trouble. Jason might finally have to confront real consequences. And the entire family would likely never forgive me. For a fleeting moment, I almost backed out. I almost convinced myself to just pay it off, to keep the peace, like I always had. But then I remembered Jason's smug smirk, Dad's righteous anger, Mom's tears. Not tears of apology, but tears of calculated, guilt-tripping manipulation. And I remembered how utterly alone I had felt sitting in that car, staring out at the valley. No, they had made their choice. Now I was going to make mine. The next few days blurred into a period of quiet, meticulous preparation. I pulled my credit report and locked it down tight, ensuring no one could ever use my information again. I changed all my passwords, fortified my online banking security, and made an appointment with a lawyer. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not even my aunt, who had always been the one relative I felt I could confide in. At this stage, it wasn't about revenge. It was about survival, about finally reclaiming control of my own life. But deep down, as I gathered documents and painstakingly wrote everything down, I could feel something darker beginning to grow. A quiet, patient, steady anger, biding its time, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. And I knew with absolute certainty that moment was coming. Meeting with a lawyer was a crucial first step, and it felt like stepping into an entirely new world. Her name was Rachel, and she possessed the calm, measured presence of someone who had seen every conceivable permutation of family drama. I sat across from her in her sleek office, clutching the folder my parents had left behind as if it were radioactive. "Brian," she began after meticulously reviewing the papers, "this is incredibly serious. What your parents did is not merely unethical, it's criminal. Forgery, fraud, Identity theft. You have every right to fight this. I nodded slowly, my chest tight, but not from panic this time. I don't want to destroy them, I clarified. I just want my name cleared. I want them to understand they can't do this to me anymore. Rachel leaned back in her chair, contemplative. Then we approach it strategically. We can begin by sending a formal demand letter. This will formally notify the bank that you did not authorize this loan, which will in turn trigger an investigation. That alone will exert significant pressure on them. If your parents fail to resolve it, then we escalate legally. Hearing the plan laid out with such precision gave me a strange kind of clarity. For so long, I had felt trapped in a reactive loop, constantly rushing to fix whatever fresh disaster they conjured. Now, for the very first time, I felt like I was ahead of them, like I finally held the upper hand. When I left Rachel's office, the very air felt different, perceptibly lighter. That week, I threw myself into work like a man possessed. For months, I had been merely coasting, showing up, doing the bare minimum, going home emotionally exhausted from the draining toll of dealing with my family. But now, I had a purpose that existed entirely outside of them, and it showed. I not only completed a major project that had been languishing half-finished on my desk, but I also stayed late a couple of nights to help my team hit a critical deadline. By Friday, my manager called me into his office. "Brian, this is excellent work," he stated, holding up the report I just submitted. "I've noticed a real shift in you lately. Whatever's going on, keep it up." I walked out of that meeting with a genuine smile, one I hadn't worn in months. For the first time, my life wasn't just about frantically keeping my family afloat. It was about building something meaningful for myself. I also started taking better care of myself. Consciously, I deep cleaned my apartment until it felt like a true fresh start, stocked my fridge with actual groceries instead of relying solely on takeout, and even finally signed up for a gym membership I'd been procrastinating on for years. Every evening, I'd go for a run or lift weights, feeling the pent-up stress literally bleed out of me one rep, one stride at a time. Meanwhile, Rachel sent a demand letter. The bank acknowledged receipt within 2 days, and just like that, things started to move. The loan was flagged for investigation. I even received a call from their fraud department. This time, not as a confused victim trying to figure out what to do, but as someone taking decisive, calculated action. "This is exactly the right step," the representative assured me. "Once we verify the signature was forged, we can remove your liability entirely." Hearing those words felt like taking my first full, unobstructed breath in weeks. Of course, my family didn't take it well. Mom called, her voice thick with tears. "Brian, how could you do this? The bank called us. Do you know what you're putting us through?" I listened calmly, then replied, "Yes, Mom, exactly what you put me through." She went utterly quiet after that. Jason, true to form, sent me a string of angry texts, most of them screaming things like, "You're ruining everything. And if the house gets taken, it's your fault." I didn't reply to a single one. Instead, I began quietly preparing for whatever would inevitably come next. I opened a separate savings account, transferred a substantial portion of my money into it, and set up automatic transfers to build it even faster. I updated my will and beneficiaries, something I'd never bothered with before, and even consulted a financial advisor. "Your situation isn't uncommon," the advisor remarked when I explained my need to protect my assets. "A lot of people with financially dependent families don't realize they need to legally shield themselves until it's too late. You're doing the right thing." I walked out of that meeting with more than just peace of mind. I had a concrete plan, and as the weeks slowly unfurled, things undeniably kept getting better. I received a modest raise at work. Nothing massive, but enough to feel like my sustained efforts were genuinely paying off. I started sleeping soundly through the night again. The persistent tightness in my chest eased considerably. Even my apartment began to feel different, warmer, quieter. One Friday evening, I found myself standing at my window, a glass of wine in hand, gazing out at the glittering city lights. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't feel that crushing weight of responsibility. I felt free. Yet, beneath that nascent freedom, something else was quietly building. Not just relief, Not just peace, but something sharper. Because every voicemail from my parents, every passive-aggressive text from Jason, every thinly veiled attempt to make me feel guilty, all of it was fuel. And I wasn't just ignoring it anymore. I was meticulously collecting it. I began diligently saving every single message, every voicemail, every text. Rachel had advised me to keep a thorough record of everything, and I did. Not just because it was legally smart, but because each saved message served as a stark reminder of why I was doing this. This wasn't solely about money anymore. It was about drawing a firm line, about ensuring they understood unequivocally that if they ever crossed me again, there would be consequences. And the more I pondered it, the more I realized I wasn't just going to stop them this time. I was going to make absolutely certain they never, ever tried this again. By the time the bank's fraud investigation truly got underway, I had already shifted into an entirely new mindset. The old Brian, who used to panic whenever his phone lit up with a family call, was gone. I wasn't scrambling to put out fires anymore. I was quietly stacking the kindling, meticulously planning exactly how to light it when the opportune moment arrived. One Thursday morning, an email landed in my inbox from the bank, confirming they had sent handwriting samples and documents to a forensic analyst. The damning words, suspected forgery, were prominently displayed in black and white, linked directly to my case number. I forwarded the email to Rachel, who called me almost immediately. "This is excellent," she affirmed. "It means the bank is taking this seriously. Once the report comes back, we can move to have your name removed from the loan entirely. And if your parents are smart, they'll refinance it themselves before this goes any further." "Do you think they will?" I asked, a tremor in my voice I hadn't expected. There was a brief pause, then Rachel's calm reply. "If they don't, Brian, they're going to find themselves in a very uncomfortable situation." I thanked her, hung up, and leaned back in my chair, deep in thought. The old me might have felt a sharp pang of guilt hearing that, but the new me felt something closer to quiet satisfaction. It wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about ensuring they never, ever put me in this position again. So I started digging, carefully, methodically. First, I checked the county property records. It turned out my parents' house wasn't just behind on the mortgage. They also had a second lien on it from a personal loan they'd taken out 2 years ago, one I hadn't even known about. The balance was substantial, the interest rate predatory, and if they didn't start paying it down soon, they were at severe risk of default. Then I pulled Jason's name in the public records database. What I found didn't entirely surprise me, but it still sent a chill down my spine. He had 3 unpaid traffic tickets, a delinquent credit card account, and an eviction filing from an apartment he'd lived in just last year. All public record, all sitting there like little time bombs waiting to detonate. I wasn't planning to use any of this information yet, but simply knowing it gave me a potent kind of leverage, the kind they couldn't possibly take away from me. Meanwhile, my lawyer connected me with a financial investigator she sometimes collaborated with. His sole job was to trace money, to build an indisputable picture where funds had gone in cases precisely like mine. I handed over everything I had, bank transfer records, old receipts, screenshots of Venmo payments, every single line item demonstrating just how much of my money had painstakingly kept my family afloat. When he sent me the comprehensive report 2 weeks later, I just sat there staring at the damning document. In 7 years, I had given my family nearly $86,000. $86,000. It wasn't just a sheer amount, though that number made my stomach twist in a sickening knot. It was a pattern. The investigator had meticulously laid it out in a detailed timeline, showing every payment and its specific purpose. It was like looking at a meticulously documented history of every time I'd said yes to keep the peace, every time I'd swallow my pride just to be the responsible one. Rachel called me after reviewing the report. "This is powerful, Brian," she stated. "If this comes to court, this paints a very clear picture of financial exploitation. It shows a pattern, not just a one-time mistake." I thanked her and hung up, my mind already racing, connecting dots I deliberately ignored for years. I was finally starting to see the whole, ugly picture now. Not just what they had done, but who they really were. And that chilling realization made my next steps even clearer to plan. I spent the next few weeks preparing quietly, maintaining a facade of normalcy in my daily life. I continued to excel at work, even earning a coveted spot on a significant upcoming project that promised a promotion. I kept going to the gym, kept eating well, kept sleeping better than I had in years. And concurrently, I meticulously assembled a kind of dossier. I printed out the financial report, the bank's investigation emails, the county property records, even Jason's various court filings. I organized them all into a neat, discreet binder and kept it in my desk drawer. It wasn't about waving it in their faces. Not yet. It was simply about being ready. The calls from my parents eventually slowed, though they didn't cease entirely. Mom left one voicemail that sounded almost rehearsed. "Brian, your father and I decided to put the house on the market if things don't improve. We hope you understand we're under a lot of stress. We'd still like you to reconsider and help out, just until we get back on our feet." I didn't call her back. Jason, on the other hand, began escalating his desperation. His texts morphed from angry accusations to outright pleading. "Asterisk, bro, please. I need help with rent this month. Landlord's threatening eviction. You've got the money. Just one more time. I swear I'll pay you back. This isn't just about me. If I get kicked out, Mom will freak. You don't want to do that to her." Asterisk, I stared at that last one for a long, agonizing moment before closing my phone and setting it face down. I wasn't going to cave. Not this time. By the end of the month, I felt like an entirely different person. The gnawing anxiety that had once eaten me alive had transformed into something sharper, a clear, steady resolve. I had the evidence, the legal support, the financial stability. For the first time in years, I felt like I possessed real power. And the more I contemplated it, the more I realized I was done waiting for them to make the next move. If they wanted to play games with my life, then it was my turn to set the rules. The day I finally decided to act was quiet and sunny, one of those deceptively calm mornings where everything feels normal, almost peaceful, right before a storm. I got up early, brewed coffee, and sat at my kitchen table, reviewing the binder one last time. Everything was there. The meticulous financial report, the forged loan documents, the county property records, even Jason's delinquent court filings. It was more than just a stack of papers now. It was undeniable leverage. Rachel and I had spent weeks meticulously refining the plan. She didn't push me toward immediate legal action, though she made it clear we had a solid case if I chose to file. Instead, she suggested we first give them a formal chance to rectify the situation in writing in a way that would put everything officially on record. "We'll draft a settlement letter," she'd explained. "It will formally demand they refinance the house and completely remove your name from any accounts within 30 days. If they refuse or ignore it, then we escalate. But this way, you've demonstrated good faith. And if we do have to go to court, the judge will clearly see you attempted every reasonable step first." It was exactly the kind of move I wanted to make, calm, strategic, and utterly unshakable. The letter went out on a Monday. It was 3 pages long, meticulously clear, and professionally worded, outlining every instance of unauthorized use of my information and every dollar I had been forced to cover over the past 7 years. At the end, it stated in no uncertain terms: failure to comply within 30 days will result in legal action, including a police report for forgery and fraud, as well as a civil claim for financial exploitation. I didn't even have to deliver it myself. Rachel sent it by certified mail. All I had to do was wait. And wait, I did. The first call came from Mom 2 days later. "Brian, what is this?" "We just got your lawyer's letter." "It's not a letter from me, Mom." I said evenly. "It's from my attorney. It outlines exactly what needs to happen next." "You can't do this to us," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "Do you have any idea what it will do to your father if this becomes public? Do you have any idea what it's done to me already?" I countered. There was a long, stunned pause before she finally said, her voice small and defeated, "We'll talk about this at dinner. Sunday. Please come." I almost said no, but then I realized this was precisely the moment I had been quietly, patiently preparing for. Sunday arrived, and I did too, precisely on time, binder firmly in hand. The house felt smaller than I remembered, cluttered, a little shabby, as if the strain of the last few months had settled deep into its very walls. Mom and Dad were waiting at the kitchen table, their expressions tight. Jason slouched in a chair off to the side, already looking bored. "Brian," Dad began, his voice strained, "this is ridiculous. You're threatening to drag your own family into court. Over money?" "No," I corrected him calmly, setting the binder squarely on the table. "Over fraud. Over 7 years of being used like a personal ATM. Over the fact that you thought forging my name was an acceptable solution to your problems." Jason rolled his eyes dramatically. "Here we go again." I opened the binder and slid the financial report across the table toward them. "This," I stated, tapping the page, "is every single payment I've made for you since I was 25. Nearly $86,000. Rent, mortgage, utilities, car repairs, emergencies. I kept you afloat while Jason figured himself out. While you two kept taking out loans you couldn't pay. And I never asked for a dime back." Mom's face went utterly pale. I took out the forged loan documents next and laid them deliberately on top of the report. "But this," I emphasized, pointing to my falsified signature, "this is where it stopped being help and started being theft." Dad's jaw worked silently, but he offered no defense. Then I fixed my gaze on Jason. "And you still think this is all some big joke? You think you can keep calling me every time you run out of money, and I'll just bail you out again? But here's the thing, Jason. I've got every eviction filing with your name on it, every unpaid bill, every delinquent account. I know exactly how deep you're in." Jason's smirk finally faltered, replaced by genuine shock. I leaned back in my chair, calm, steady, commanding. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to refinance the house and remove my name from that loan within 30 days. You're going to stop using my information for anything ever again. And you are never going to ask me for money again. If you do, I filed this binder with the court, and the three of you can explain yourselves to a judge." Silence hung heavy in the kitchen, thick and suffocating. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "And if we can't refinance," I met her eyes, unflinching, "then you lose the house. And that will be on you, Mom, not me." Jason muttered something defiant under his breath, but one sharp, withering look from Dad silenced him instantly. I stood, carefully collected my binder, and walked toward the door. "You have 30 days, I said, turning back one last time. Use them wisely." When I left, I didn't feel triumphant, not precisely. Not yet, but I felt something far better. I felt in control. And as I drove home, a strange, profound calm settled over me. Whatever happened next, I knew it would be on my terms. The 30 days that followed were quiet, unnervingly so. No calls, no texts, no guilt-tripping voicemails. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't constantly lighting up with family drama every few hours. At first, it was almost disorienting, the sudden absence of chaos. Then, slowly, it began to feel good, peaceful, like breathing fresh. Clean air after living too long in a smoke-filled room. Rachel checked in every week, keeping me updated on the bank's progress. 2 weeks in, she called with the news I've been holding my breath for. The handwriting analysis came back. "Brian, the signature was confirmed as a forgery. You are officially cleared of any liability for the loan. They'll issue you a formal letter in the next few days." I sat there at my desk, holding the phone to my ear, feeling something deep in my chest finally, completely unwind. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice a little hoarse. "That's it," Rachel confirmed. "From here, the bank will hold your parents solely responsible for the debt. Whether they refinance or not is entirely up to them." That night, I poured myself a generous glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out over the city lights with a strange mixture of profound relief and a new sense of anticipation. The crushing weight I'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted. I wasn't just free, I was untouchable. And then the real fallout began. 2 days later, Mom called. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail, her voice trembling, ragged with panic. "They called, Brian. The bank called. They said the loan is now solely in our names. We can't make the payments. Your father is talking about selling the house. I don't know what we're going to do. I listened to the message twice, then calmly deleted it. I didn't feel smug, not exactly, but I didn't feel a shred of guilt either. They had brought this entirely upon themselves. By the fourth week, the house had officially been listed for sale. I found out not from them, but from the property records I'd been quietly monitoring. They must have priced it low, because it went under contract fast. The following Sunday, Mom texted me again, dinner one last time. Please come. I hesitated for a long moment before agreeing. Not because I thought they deserved my presence, but because I felt a strange, detached need to see this through to its absolute conclusion. When I arrived, the house was eerily half empty. Boxes were stacked against the hallway walls. Familiar furniture was conspicuously missing from the living room, and an undeniable air of finality hung heavy in the air. Mom looked tired, somehow older, her shoulders slumped. Dad sat at the kitchen table, a formidable stack of papers before him, his jaw set in a rigid line. Jason paced restlessly, his hands jammed deep into his hoodie pockets. This is what you wanted, right? Jason sneered as soon as I walked in, his voice bitter. House is gone. We're screwed. Congratulations. I didn't rise to the bait. No, I replied calmly, my voice steady. This is what you chose. I gave you 30 days to fix this without losing the house. You didn't. Mom sank heavily into a chair, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. We couldn't qualify for refinancing without you, Brian. We tried. We really did. I almost believed her. Maybe they had tried, but it didn't matter anymore. The point wasn't whether they had made an effort. The point was that they had finally been forced to carry the weight themselves. Dad finally looked up from the daunting stack of papers. We'll have enough from the sale to pay off the debt, he conceded, his voice hoarse. Barely. After that, we'll rent for a while. I nodded slowly. Good. That's what responsible adults do. They live within their means. Jason snorted derisively. Easy for you to say. You've always had money. I turned to him, my voice sharper now, a cold edge to it. I had money because I worked for it. Because I didn't blow it on vacations I couldn't afford, or max out credit cards, or ignore my bills until someone else had to pay them. Jason looked away, his face flushing crimson. Mom's voice was small, fragile. So that's it then? You're really cutting us off. I took a deep, steadying breath. I'm not cutting you off, Mom. I'm just stepping back. I'm not your safety net anymore. If you fall, you fall. And you figure out how to get back up without calling me. A heavy silence settled over the kitchen. It wasn't the tense, angry silence from before. This was something deeper, heavier. Acceptance, perhaps. I stood there, looking around the house one last time. The house I'd grown up in, the house I fought so desperately, for so long, to save. You know, I said quietly, my gaze sweeping over the empty spaces, I used to think it was my job to keep this house standing, to keep all of you standing. But maybe this was what truly needed to happen. Maybe losing it is what finally forces all of us to grow up. No one said a word. I walked to the front door, my hand resting on the cool doorknob, then turned back one last time. This is the last time I'm coming here. The next chapter of my life doesn't include this house, or the version of me that lived in it. If you want to be part of that next chapter, it has to be on different terms. Equal terms. And with that, I left. Driving away, I felt a strange, bittersweet mix of grief and profound relief. The house was gone, yes, but so was the suffocating burden I had carried with it. For the first time in years, my future felt like it belonged entirely to me. When I got home, I carefully placed the binder back in my desk drawer. Not out of spite, not as a threat, but simply as a reminder, a record of where I'd been, what I'd survived, and what I'd finally walked away from. As I closed the drawer, I caught my reflection in the dark window and saw something I hadn't seen in a very, very long time. I was smiling,